May 2026 was Patrick Lecture 191, Inner and Outer Experience. I found it to be a powerful lecture, so I extended it into a fifth week. In the fifth week, we're looking at the greatest fear is to feel fear. It felt like a culmination of what the whole lecture was about. The guide proposes that anxiety, low-level anxiety, is displaced fear. And anxiety is hard to get rid of because we have, in effect, created a mess and thrown away the key to cleaning up the mess. That is, we've disconnected the residue of fear. We've scattered it every place, trying to disguise it. We've attempted to disconnect it from its original feeling. So you've got fear and you don't want to feel the fear, so you dissipate it down into what we call anxiety. Anxiety is difficult to clean up because we may not recognize, we may have lost the conscious awareness that it was based on a fear. So it is important to feel all feelings, and it is very important to feel fear. Again, fear is a message. It says something is not right. I like to think in terms of the positive. I like to fall back on why we're here, what this is all about. We are here because we have misconceptions, we have false beliefs, and we're here to try them out and see how they operate. There's a place in us that knows. There's the real self that the guide teaches us to create a dialogue with and partner with. And when I say we, our ego selves, the human personality that is speaking to you right now. I'm not alone, but I can become disconnected in a sense, in that I don't hear and I don't listen to the part of me that does know. The part of me that knows the truth also knows that I'm not fully in truth. And while it may know that, there's an attraction, there's a reason why I'm struggling with these demons. Feelings are messages that something is going on. Unpleasant feelings are indications that we are in illusion, that we are succumbing to false beliefs, that we are engaging in non-loving activities. So disharmony indicates that we are going against the basis of spiritual law, which is love. Harmonious feelings mean that we are working with or towards. It doesn't have to be perfect. And trying to nuance these is difficult, so I'm just going to stay with harmonious versus disharmonious. Fear is the sense that we are wrong and that somebody knows it. Now we project that onto an authority figure that will punish us or send us to eternal damnation. We get that from parents who were discipline figures and who were imperfect. But the fear is that we will be found out. Again, I like to look for the positive. Found out for what? And on a spiritual sense, found out for hanging on to a false belief. So we don't want to look at the fear because we don't want to give up the false belief. We don't want to go down the road of releasing that. Now, a false belief can become so much of our identity that we feel like we will lose ourselves. And there's truth to that. The artifice we've built, the superstructure that we've built will be lost if it is based on untruth. If we build on truth, it cannot be lost. It may transform. And it very well may transform into something that we can't instantaneously identify, especially in the before stage. We won't know what the after stage looks like. So this is like a 3-year-old becoming afraid of becoming a 4-year-old. It can't know 4-year-old, it's 3. There's a process by which it can't help it, it will happen. And we can resist the process, we can struggle and fight against it, and we can throw up scary things. Oh, terrible things will happen when you're 4, and I'm safer when I'm 3. It doesn't stop the process. In the same sense, we don't stop our spiritual progress just by creating all this stuff. The weight of the false superstructure will eventually crash down, and we will feel it. So feel it sooner rather than later. There's an overall fear of emotion because emotion carries messages, and we want to control those messages. So I want to speak to what underlies that, which is that element of self-will, the element of not wanting to be at the mercy of spiritual law. The part of the self-will that wants to be God, that wants to make the decisions, that wants to discern right from wrong, that wants to control its life, its experiences, create only feelings that it chooses to accept and throw the rest away, diminish them, stomp them into the ground. This is self-will. Part of the difficulty that humans have is that we are not very humble. So it's hard to accept that we're here to play, we're here to experiment and explore, that a given lifetime, no matter how impressive it may be, is not the end of the road. We don't have a unique and special goal that we have to tag into by the end of a lifetime, that we're allowed to be wrong, that we're allowed to play out entire lives that are wrong, and the rightness of that is what we will learn. Now, we may not learn while we're still walking the earth. We may learn in spirit. We still learn. So reality doesn't change just because we don't like it or we don't want to cooperate with it. And you can spend a lifetime bailing against the tide, bailing, pushing, trying to push back the wind. It won't work. But you can occupy yourself and you can make yourself feel important. And so I look at the benefit of that. Why is that important? We are important. So there needs to be some development that happens, and it can be lopsided, is how I see this. The self wants to dictate reality, refuses to accept what it doesn't like. It chooses to stay in illusion. That may last for an entire lifetime. So we can come up with examples. Well, this person lied and cheated and got away with it. That's very childish and simplistic. It presumes that there's no accounting for how we behave. It presumes that if there is a deity or a spiritual reality, it can't see beyond the obvious, that it can't read the accounting books and know where fraud is, that it can't see behind lies and puffed up egos and excuses. We actually diminish spirituality down to the equivalent of a human intellect and say it can be deceived when it cannot. So if it cannot be deceived, it sees everything. And there's a reason why some people are being allowed to fool themselves and fool others. So the test is, do they fool you? Do you fool yourself? And if you do not wish to do that, then we study things like pathwork about how to see feedback for what it is, to discern, to use self-will constructively. But the whole point is to become more loving and more free and more at home in ourselves rather than making the world perfect. The larger reality, humanity is not about making the world perfect. It's about a perfection that is a little bit beyond human consciousness. And we're only seeing a few steps in a larger process. So another way of looking at this is part of our fear is we have a fear of life. We don't know what's going on. Because we want to know, we want to drag it down to the equivalent of Lego blocks and construction materials that we can understand and that we have power over and that we feel comfortable with. But that desire to lower the fear of life is the desire to control and be in charge and to expand our knowing past what it is going to be able to hold. So short summary, the greatest fear is to feel the fear. My invitation is jump into it. Find out what that thing is. And it can be surprising. Sometimes the fear is not what we made it out to be. And it can give you a bit of a chuckle to realize that you've created a false fear. But it's also delightful because then you can move on with your life. So thanks for listening. I hope you read the lecture. Take care.